I finally fell asleep around 2 a.m. the last time I looked at the clock. I woke up a short time after because I couldn't breathe. The fan had been moved away from my face, almost a 90-degree turn. I didn't think anything of it, moved it back, and went to sleep. A little while later I woke up again because I couldn't breathe. My fan had again been moved. I moved it back, but was awoken a little bit at the thought of it being moved. I laid awake for a little while and finally got up to check to see if there was a way it moved itself. Nothing. So I chalked it up to me being sick and dreaming I had moved it or something. I drift back off to sleep, only to be woken again by the feeling of not being able to breathe. The fan, you guessed it, had been moved again. I looked at the clock and it was 3:34 a.m. I said out loud, "Would you stop?" Then heard a little giggle. You guys, absolutely no thank you. That stresses me out so freaking bad. I fully believe in paranormal experiences. I believe that you can communicate to an extent between the physical world and spiritual realms. If you believe that, or if you've ever done research on it, it is said that like the hours from, I think, 1 to 4 a.m. are when the veil is the thinnest. So the fact that this is all going on around that time makes me freaked out even more. And when I read this story for the first time, I got the chills, especially the giggle at the end. Like, bro, I don't know what it is. I imagine this being a child for some reason, but whenever I watch a scary movie and little kids are involved, oh my gosh, it makes everything 10 times scarier to me. So let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you so much to our Reddit friend for allowing me to share that story. Our next story is called "I Received a Voice Message from My Stepdad the Night He Passed Away." This happened in January of 2019. My stepdad had been in our family's life for 30 years before he was diagnosed with cancer. He never had any biological children, but he had me and my sister, and we couldn't have asked for a better stepdad or granddad for our children. I was with him when he was diagnosed and with him for all his treatments. From the very beginning, there was no question of who would take care of him. It was going to be me. He and my mother were split up at the time, and it just seemed natural that I would be the one to do it because of how close we were. And honestly, I considered it an honor. Unfortunately, his prognosis was not very good, and they gave him less than a year to live. He barely made it 6 months after his diagnosis. He was in the hospital the last 6 days of his life. He had a DNR, and as hard as it was, I didn't argue with him about it. 2 days before he passed, he was in and out of consciousness and was barely able to talk. His last night, he was able to communicate that he really wanted me to go home and check on the dogs. This was just after 3 in the morning. I told him I would do that and then I would be right back. He gave me a small smile and nodded. It took 20 minutes for me to get have said that it may have been an old message that I had just received that morning, but either way, I thought it was amazing. Okay, so I would like to point out that both of these stories take place at like I don't know, close to 3:30, 3:45 in the morning. I'm telling you, that time of night, or morning I suppose, is significant when it comes to connection to the spiritual realm. I understand why some people would say that she just got this voicemail late. I have heard of that happening, but I wouldn't call this one spooky by any means, but it does give me chills, because I think it was very special that she was able to get that message from her stepdad, given how challenging of a situation it was to accept that he was passing. Our next story is called I Experienced Something Terrifying and I Don't Know What to Do. I live in Hialeah, where there's a lot of voodoo and Santeria, so it may not be surprising when I say I have a story to tell about the paranormal. I think because I've been a skeptic my whole life, which is quite ironic, and you'll see why. My mother's side of the family, including her, has always been in the practice of voodoo, so I've always thought that my mother had some kind of tie to the afterlife. I guess you can say that she sees ghosts. My whole life she's told me tales of her encounters with the afterlife, but I solely listened just because they were interesting. I never believed them until now. As I said, I've always been a skeptic, so I never really pictured me having an encounter with a spirit. I am 15, which is the same age my mother started to see things. On to the actual story. I was in my room home alone because my mother was working the night shift at her job. She's a security guard at a church graveyard. Quite ironic, isn't it? I was on my computer playing a game called The Sims 4. In the middle of me playing this game, I heard a bang downstairs. I didn't really pay any mind to it since I had a cat that liked to jump on things. Her name was Lucy. I ignored it until I heard my other cat, Lola, meowing so loud I heard it through my earbuds. It was aggravating me, so I went to check on the two. To my horror, I saw Lucy laying unconscious on the ground because my toaster was thrown at her. Who the hell threw the toaster? I have no idea because I was the only one home. It freaked me out, and I immediately grabbed Lucy and Lola and brought them both to my room. I locked the door and started to pray, which is something I don't usually do. I thought it was weird, but I was more focused on my knocked out cat. She woke up a little while after, which saved me from a heart attack. An hour goes by and nothing else happens until I hear something scratching my door. Both my cats looked at the door and didn't blink. They just kept staring. This wasn't subtle scratching either. It was as if someone was trying to get in. This was when I actually started to freak out because I was so also gave me the most ridiculous chills. This one felt like a horror story, like the image of this girl picking up her phone to her mom calling, and then both realizing that her mom is not in the house, and there's like this, I don't know, I'm gonna call it a demon, like, that impersonates her mom. Oh my god, that scares me so bad. And I'm so glad that this girl did not leave her bedroom. And again, you guys, if you don't believe in this kind of stuff, these stories in general probably will seem silly to you, but I don't know, I'm very much of the belief that there is a spiritual realm, and, you know, good and bad can exist in both. So let's move on to our next story. This is actually going to be our last story for this video. It's a longer one, and it's definitely on the paranormal side. I was able to have a pretty in-depth conversation with this person in the Reddit messaging, and was given a lot of details about this case I say this case, oh my gosh, I'm so true crime, about this experience that just shook me. So let's dive into it. This one is titled Strange Ouija Board Experience. All of this took place between 2017 and 2018. There are 4 main people who were involved, and I have changed the names for sake of privacy. Sarah is me, the author, Olivia, Megan, and Elizabeth. Elizabeth does not become involved until a little later on in the story, and we will call the 2 spirits Blue and Red. A quick bit of information about Blue and Red. These spirits are seemingly paired, and I feel that that is due to how they died. I have been asked not to share anything about them. I would rather not test the waters to see what would happen if I did. Anyways, we barely got one without the other being there too. Red is a very strong entity, and you could always tell because of the amount of energy present. You could feel it in your chest and shoulders, and sometimes my ears would ring from it. Blue was a weaker entity, however you could still feel whenever he was present. Both of them together could be suffocating sometimes. It was around 11 p.m. or so one evening, if I remember correctly. Megan and Olivia had the idea to use a Ouija board out of curiosity, but I was skeptical and opted out of the first session that was ever done. Megan and Olivia decided to do it without me, and afterwards they came back to me going on and on about how it actually worked. I became very intrigued, so I decided to join them for the next session. Next session occurred the next day. Of course, I wanted to ask all the obvious questions, like how they died or whatever their life was like. These entities were always very talkative. Red was usually the one to speak for them both and always moved the planchette quickly whenever we would ask about things like music or something. However, if we asked anything about their lives or death, the planchette would always either move very slowly or not at all. The paranormal experiences we had in the beginning were the stereotypical ones that most people claim to experience with Ouija boards. They occurred both during and outside of sessions. This includes objects falling off of shelves, items disappearing and reappearing in a different location, footsteps, tapping, knocking, door handles jiggling, doors moving, electronics turning off randomly, etc. It was just mischievous things hairs exposed. I even had an experience where a few of my razors were dulled. They were so dull that no matter how hard I pressed, it wouldn't even begin to start removing any hair on my legs. Anyways, over time, the paranormal experiences began to escalate. We would always see the same ghostly figures. They appeared as human, except they had no faces. Red was a shorter entity, and Blue was a very tall entity. Megan, Olivia, and I would even interact with them in dreams. Even in our dreams, they would have no face. Some of the dreams I experienced weren't anything crazy. I would dream about just chatting and having a drink with them. Blue and I just chatting about random things, and there was one where Blue and I chatted together about my dog just after his passing. Then there was a fourth that I still find odd and have no clue what it means. I was in a school classroom and I was hiding under a desk. Blue and Red just stood there and watched me. Olivia had a similar dream. She dreamed about being at a school cafeteria, and they just stood there and watched her. We wonder if this was them trying to tell us about their lives without having to actually express it through words, almost as if it were easier that way. This is when we started experiencing some things that were a little bit weird. We were all very close and would sometimes tease each other. An example being that Olivia would jokingly call me Egg because I was almost given a name when I was born where those would be my initials. Anyways, there was a time when Megan jokingly called Olivia a hoe. We all laughed. However, it would become very apparent the next day that these entities did not appreciate that comment. The next day, she had a car door closed on her, a milkshake she was drinking exploded in her face, etc. This would be around the time that Megan started to grow apart from us and Elizabeth became involved. Megan and Elizabeth had known each other for most of their lives, so Megan would always go to Elizabeth and vent. This negative experience was one, I assume. Megan came to Red, Blue, and Olivia and I to tell us about how she was feeling, which in turn led to an argument. I remember during the argument, Blue came through and said this: "It's like talking to a brick wall." Megan stopped doing sessions with us after this, but later on, Olivia and I found out that she and Elizabeth would start doing their own sessions without us. Olivia and I kept doing the board together, and we noticed that Red and Blue would hang out around us a lot. Red would hang around Olivia more, and Blue would hang around me more. We didn't really care, as nothing that happened was causing harm. They were just there. However, I can remember a few experiences with Blue. Two included me asking them to scare my classmates at school because I was bored. In one situation, they pushed a laptop across a desk at the front of the room while everyone had been standing at the back. Another incident included him banging very loudly on the back wall of the auditorium while me and some other classmates were sitting at the front. The banging noise was equivalent to fireworks going up in the back room. This third experience is in a separate paragraph because it was something that I think about often. I was in the hallway once and I was being harassed by a group of guys. Nobody else was in the halls because it was in the middle of class. All of a sudden, I feel a strong presence and knew someone was there. It didn't take but half a second for this spirit to start banging loudly on the lockers next to the group. The boys obviously were very confused and had decided to go back to class because they were freaked out. When they left, the banging stopped. Things like this continued for a while. However, this original three of us who were involved